So the PvE PvP debate topic, whatever you want to call it. Hold on. Wait, don't leave. Don't click away. I promise. This is more informational than emotional. I'm gonna be a little emotional though. Okay, let me cry a little bit on camera. It's flourishing. It's popping off. Ah, yes. Should we ban all gameplay that affects other players? No, suck it up. It's Star Citizen. You're gonna get attacked everywhere. It's good. It's classic. It goes back, dude. This is a he talks about actually in this very talk.
With high-sec areas,
he's talking about
initially this response will be measured, but over time will
he's talking about like comm arrays.
Pirates will be able to disrupt this monitoring by shutting down the nearby comm arrays, but this will be highlighted in your star map.
Like that's nothing new. Anybody who's I'm so sorry. I just realized I turned up the wrong thing. Let me I turned up the music volume for you guys. Let's go back to where he's
will be on
talking
the way.
about comm arrays.
Pirates will be able to disrupt this monitoring by shutting down the nearby comm arrays, but this will be highlighted in your star map.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, it's the audio is so confusing when I don't have a hardware control. Thank you, Rode. The comm arrays are not new. Ever since 3.0, you've been able to go into comm arrays, shut them down, and like make sure that you can do crimes without getting in trouble. This played out here. Might have been the next year. One of these years, they did the whole comm array loop. And I think this is the wrong video. But you guys know the loop if you've been around here a while. Basically, you go into this array, you turn it off, and you can commit crimes anywhere in that area. So already the idea of game systems controlling how people act is being worked on. They just got completely dropped and they're not really paid attention to. We can't even really do player bounties right now. But that's a pretty obvious solution to this that I think a lot of people like. In fact, I did a little poll just to see what the community thinks of it. Our community, it's you guys. So, take that with a grain of salt. We're a little crazy, but most people are very much about I'm game features, I guess, because I can't spell, as opposed to separating PvE exclusive servers or shards or the armistice zones. I think most people like that idea. It's just a matter of nobody really knows if CIG is going to actually do that. They talked about it at CitizenCon, but somehow that still kind of escapes people. And if you go and look on, say, the subreddit, oh boy, the subreddit. And I want to be super clear too. This is not a video about saying, hey, don't complain about the current state of the game, because it's bad. I think that, if anything, CIG's strategy this year has proven just how underdeveloped a lot of the systems in the game are, and it's starting to show. The cracks are starting to show, from the inventory to the security to all that stuff. I more want to use this video as a way to inform about where the game is supposed to go, what they've said in the past, and what they've said just now, as we looked at during that 1.0 demo. But if we scroll through the subreddit, you could find some threats like this, man, and it's a trip. So, Albedo Thick Queen, thank you for the post, Albedo Thick Queen, said, PvE player just tried out some PvP for 3 days. I'm not going to read this whole thing. This is their post. You guys can check this out if you want, just to give some context to this conversation, because they're going to check out the comments on it. They said this was the biggest show since in their entire career, even though you play PvP games like COD and Battlefield. Desync between players, check. Teleporting or straight out killing each other, check. Players glitching, exploiting themselves through locked doors, check. Combat logging for salty losers, check. People just coming back in 2 minutes after getting killed, check. Orgs and big squads camping and locking down entire stations with their capital ships, check. People camping and waiting at strategic positions because nothing is instanced, check. Freight elevators bugging left and right, check. Nothing consistently working, like inserting fuses or keycards or generally anything. Check. I do want to say they do say it's been like this for years. Technically, we haven't even gotten to use keycards and fuses for years. But I get them. I get what they mean. There's a lot of things listed here that like genuinely make FPS PvP not as fun in this game. Just in general, dying not as fun in this game. But I think a lot of this stuff are still symptoms of the game we have right now. Like orgs locking down I mean, let's just talk about how we can't have player bounties working very well yet. We definitely need people who can come and take out groups of people who are just camping these locations, but also the combat logging is like, these are not so much game design problems, I think. Except for definitely the Lazarus situation in the PTU right now. That's not looking good. And in terms of like the spawns and how they do that, they definitely need to make it so that people aren't dying as soon as they spawn. But from respawn rules and how those beds work to item recovery and how you get your stuff back right now, those are two big things that are definitely ruining this situation that they're talking about here. And somebody else makes a good point here. It's not PvP, it's the implementation. They shove everything into one area. I think they're talking about specifically the PTU, maybe. Anti-social game design. This is how you kill an MMO. Somebody else here said, I've taken Hathor and OLP PvE missions a few times, never gotten close to the POIs before taken out by groups of players. Never any communication. I don't bother with any content that drives PvP anymore. I've never minded dying in PvP before, but the sheer time that can be wasted, I just don't have that kind of free time anymore. So again, we're going to talk about what CIG has said about this whole thing and how they plan on handling this, but I'm going to agree with these people that they're hosting this like it's a game now. You know, we're so used to this being just features that get dropped in every so often, and it's kind of like being built. But CIG is literally hosting this like it's an active live service game. They're doing regular updates every month with narrative additions and little like character-based narratives and stuff. People are looking at this like a real game, and if it's literally, you go in here and you die and you just have no freaking clue why. If you're a new player, there's no telling you how this all works unless you go and look it up. And then on top of that, you don't even really get the chance to talk to people because the VoIP system is broken off. And finally, to wrap it all up, nobody gets in trouble if they do that kind of thing to you. So you feel a little hopeless. And for us, that's not a problem because we, as we're about to see, know where things are going. But for people who just are hopping into the game, it's really painful. They really need to get security going in this game. Yeah, so this person mentions like there are a lot of good reasons to avoid PvP. Rep is one of them. Rep not being really effective to people is just, it's a problem. But this is not the only thread. We can keep scrolling through here and you just find like all kinds of, dang it, I just refreshed. Maybe the problem is how hyperbolic the Spectrum player base is, but this isn't even Spectrum. This is Reddit, bro. You taking a step down from the hyperbole. There's another thread. I just passed it. Here we go. So you could just find threads of people asking more about this. A lot of people are unhappy mainly with the PvP slaughterfest of events that are being made. That's also another part of it. Everybody keeps looking at these as events, but I feel like give it 3 months and it's not going to be crowded at all like it is right now. Again, that doesn't excuse the design itself. Here's another one about murder hobos. We'll destroy this game. There's a fundamental mismatch between Star Citizen wanting things to be very long-term with bedlogging and death of a spaceman and taking an EVE Online approach to letting players be assholes. It just fundamentally takes less work and effort to destroy things than it does to build them. That's Weasel on this Reddit here. This person said, I stay far away from Stanton. Stanton attracts the type of player to prey on folks just trying to play the game. These same players are too afraid to actually travel to Pyro, where they know they'll have their pushed in. Similar sentiments I think it's good for CIG to pay attention to the fact that this has been a conversation for years, but it still continues to grow. I would love if they could make a video just dedicated to explaining how they want to keep the game safe for people, because they have all this information out there as we're about to go over, but it's still like, oh my God, I keep freaking refreshing. Why is this key refresh? That's so annoying. That looked like it was the post I wanted to touch on before we got into the news. Whining about PvP incessantly will ruin this game. See, so it turns into just an overall debate back and forth, while CIG just sort of lets us hash it out. I'm going to find this post though, because it did mention CIG ignoring PvE. And I'm not even diving into these to find them. We're just scrolling through this quickly, and you can see how much conversation there is surrounding this. All right, I'm not going to find that one. But yeah, then you have people telling other people that they're whining. And then you have somebody telling them to not whine. And then at the end of the day, everybody's debating over something that CIG has answered. PvE servers or optional PvP, somebody said. With the recent addition of amazing content like the research station and the sandworm, it's clear that Star Citizen is reaching new levels of immersion and depth. And I love that. It's the kind of PvE experience that I've been waiting for. But sadly, just like always, trying to enjoy these new locations gets ruined by random players who shoot you on sight, often for no reason. It's frustrating, and in my opinion, it's hurting the long-term health of the game. A lot of the incredible content CIG is building ends up being inaccessible or simply not worth the risk because of this constant fear of getting griefed. Dude, we're in such a phase of this game where they just don't have the systems to back up the game they're building. I mean, it would be crazy for them to change the instancing and all of that based around what's happening now when nobody cares about death. That is the most important part, in my opinion. It's like they need to get people to care about what actually happens to them now. There was a good talk with Todd Pappy back in the day. Let's see if I can just find it through searching here. Yeah, we really need security. We need reputation. We need proper costs of respawning, life insurance, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I know it's not going to deter the worst of people if they die, but imagine if you knew that dying 7 times would reset your character. Now, I know, Death of the Spaceman, worst idea ever. Don't have to do it, sure, but just humor it. If you died permanently every time your character was cycled 7 times, would you take things more seriously? Just like simple yes or no. Not saying that everybody's going to act completely normal, not saying you can't have 2 different accounts, or that the consequences don't actually matter that much to you. Just the literal idea of like, if there are more consequences, do you take things more seriously? The majority of people will say yes. And I think there are a lot of people right now who will shoot on sight, not because they want to kill other people, but just because they want to make sure they're the ones who don't die. And if everyone knows that everyone is a little bit more scared of dying, and if CIG can give us the proper tools to know if somebody has been violent in the past, that clears up a lot of misunderstandings that happen right now. Again, that's not talking about, the worst of us who just don't care at all for anything and will just do whatever, whenever. But I think it handles quite a few of your more casual and common misunderstandings that end up with somebody dying. Now, there is a great segment in this whole talk where they really just kind of get into how PvP is meant to work in this game, and how they're trying to build hotspots in the game that for sure you can go to and interact with other players. Not necessarily instanced locations, but imagine, hell, this is how real life works, right? You go to certain places because you know certain people are going to be there. That's all they want to try and do in this game. Let's not even start here. Let's go back to the beginning where I'm going to need to cut down so much of this intro because this is the actual important part. We just took forever to get here. Chris Roberts originally talked about the design of the game, instancing, all that stuff. Basically, they wanted it to be, let me find the specific parts here. The magic of Star Citizen's multiplayer design is how we combine a persistent universe with a more traditional temporary multiplayer battle instance. The way it works is that the persistent universe server, which we're calling the Galaxy server, keeps track of all player assets, groups, relationships, and locations inside the universe. As the Galaxy server isn't handling any real-time action, it can handle our complete player base, which right now would be about 45,000 players, but is designed to be able to scale to millions if needed. The other key thing the Galaxy server does is dynamically place players based on their location, skill level, alignment, and player versus player preference into battle instances. Think of a battle instance like a Battlefield 3 multiplayer session or a World of Tanks battle, with the key difference being that the selection of players is done transparently and is in fiction. This is where, when you see people say, they originally said that PvP would be a choice. This is where it comes from. Now, this is a 13-year-old document, for starters. But this does show how the game is shaping up to be something different. And I made a video about that here. If you are a supporter, you can watch it now. It's right here. MMOs that allow that, shut up. Star Citizen is becoming what it's meant to be. If you're a YouTube channel member, you can check this out. I would give it a watch because it does talk a lot about this. And basically, back at this time, they wanted to split everything up into a bunch of instances where you would get thrown into a new instance every time you got to a place. And that instance could literally be a PvP instance. So I'm going to go down to the part where he mentions this kind of thing. All right. First he talks about here, you wake up in the city, you get your stuff ordered, you buy your cargo, and then you launch into space. If there are players already in orbit around the planet, then an orbital instance would be, if there are players already in orbit around the planet, there will already be an orbit instance created. If it's not full, then you'll be placed into one. If it is full, then a new one will be dynamically created again. So this would be like how Starfield works. Basically, you hit a button, it puts you over the planet, you're looking down on it, and you're in this kind of instance. It would work just like this. You'd load up in here, and you'd be able to fly around space stations, looking around. You could see the planet up from orbit. But then when you actually wanted to go down to the planet, you'd load this loading screen sort of situation, and it would basically show you this whole cutscene, and then you would land and be down on the ground. Kind of like Star Wars Outlaws, if you've played that. Now, once you get up into space, you would be in this instance. You could pull up your navigation computer and set a course for your destination. If that destination is several systems away, like Terra, the nav computer will chart a course through the relevant jump points. You'll be able to adjust this like on Google Maps. So if you choose to jump to a different system on the system map, it will reroute you and all that stuff, yada, yada. Okay. So once you plot your jump, it will send you on your way. At this point, you've been handed back to the Galaxy server, which is determining whether you will encounter a hostile. Literally, if you're going to get interdicted while you're jumping. This would be someone that has tagged you as a point of interest or a predetermined encounter on the way, or if you're going to run across ongoing battle instance that is relevant to you. We actually saw that's going to be a thing in Star Citizen 1.0. These encounters could be with an NPC or a live player and are sorted on skill level, and also, which is important to all of you, that like a more single player experience and don't want to deal with griefers, based on your player versus player preference. So he says it again. So if you've set your game settings to be low PvP, and if you're in a relatively safe area, you'll likely have an NPC encounter as opposed to a PvP one. Of course, your ranking and any reputation you earn won't be the same with a PvE encounter versus a PvP. My hope is for this dynamic is that it will allow people to play Star Citizen in a safer, more single-player, open-world style, but as they grow in confidence and want to test their mettle against other real players, they can take the training wheels off and get into battles with real players. There will always be areas of the universe that no matter what your PvP setting is, will be PvP. These will be systems that are on the fringes of the policed galaxy and will be notorious for pirate and other illegal activity. They will also be the most lucrative areas if you can survive. Now, this did not happen because, as you all know, the game isn't instanced. All of this changed once they started with server meshing and decided the whole game was going to be one giant area. So instead of instead of artificially limiting these things via instances, they're choosing to do it geographically. And that's what brings us to what Todd Pappy has to say about this a good 8 years later. Still kind of showing that they're on that same direction with this, but they're doing it a little bit differently than what that sounded like. But again, I think one of the most important things to notice here is that he says, if you've set your game settings to be low PvP, not no PvP, but low PvP, and you're in a relatively safe area, you'll likely have an NPC encounter. They don't rule out PvP. At least not in this. But anyways, on to what Todd was saying.
Different solar systems are connected to each other. So, and obviously...
Hold on, this is really quiet.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, within the system. It's about looking for them and then, are you turning off the monitored zones? Are you, basically out in the middle of nowhere? So, and if so, then I think it should happen there. Then we also obviously have like abandoned space stations and Jumptown and these
Korea, the hotspots.
Exactly. So we have certain hotspots, with.
Notice he mentioned Korea. Korea is a dynamic zone similar to Hathor or Ghost Hollow, or all of these sandbox activity locations. That's what they're talking about here.
The system that will, I still think they're 100% valid, and that people should be able to go there and try that out.
It serves a double purpose. It attracts the people looking for it to those places, and it lets the people who want to avoid those places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The problem is, besides the fact that like people are a little bit insane and they're just murdering everyone at these locations and they need to stop that, the problem is also that because of the state of the game we're in, where there isn't that much to do, and the way that the game is being advertised, which is that there are monthly events that are coming up with new content that everybody should try because it's so heavily advertised and it's the only new big thing that's flashing in front of everyone's faces, people who normally wouldn't be necessarily drawn to that content want to go to it because it's interesting and new and fun and exciting. And I don't think that's who they're building these for. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be building other things for those players. I just think that they have a limited amount of content that they can put into the game, and this is the content they're choosing. And just like any other time in Star Citizen's lifetime, that feels like you're ignoring other people's gameplay to those people.
And, and ideally in the star map in the future, where you kind of see where like hotspots of activity and then that kind of can gear or at that point in time, you can choose your route, with that information. So in the past, I know that we've talked about like a PvP slider, and we're not going to have anything that's player facing, but obviously for us as developers, we still want to be able to tune, how much, if the players are gearing more towards PvP, based off their actions, then that's more of the content that we would be pushing towards them, whether those be bounties or assassination missions or those types of things.
Okay.
But if the players are not geared towards that, then, that to me is basically their choices matter, in kind of the content that we're providing towards them and pushing, towards them. So, and then as far as, even just how the fights play out. So let's say you and I are fighting PvP, and let's say I have a warrant, for my arrest because I've been a bad boy, and you killed me, so therefore the reward that you're getting, for taking me out should be higher because you're going up against another player. Then you'll be able to, when physical inventory comes in, then anything that I'm carrying with me, you'll be able to take, and it might be in damage, or it might be in disrepair, or other things happen, during the fight. But it'll be up to you to choose if you want to take it or not. And so that gives the players, different ways to collect rewards or basically loot, the bodies or the ships, based off of that action.
Okay. I imagine physicalized inventory is probably going to play a bigger role in choosing your loadouts and such too.
All right, I'm gonna jump forward a little bit here.
If the answer is no, then you might die, or you have a higher likelihood of dying.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding correctly, I'm just going to wrap you up here. Make sure I got it. For folks who are looking for PvP opportunities, there will be holistic solutions, places like Pyro, places like Jump Point, places like Korea, places that encourage and draw that activity to it. For people who want to avoid it, there will be lawful systems like Terra and Stanton, it's like that, where they won't be 100% protected from it, but it will be highly discouraged, and they should be able to play most of their play experience, free from potential molestation from other players.
And this, they don't actually get into instances here, which I think is something that has changed a little bit over time. I mean, the game started out instanced sort of in design, then it moved towards what they're talking about here. And now over the last several years, we've seen that they still want to do instances in certain situations. So there is going to be content that is specifically meant to lock you away from other people to play. It's just not in the game yet. And we'll touch on that right after this.
Physicalized inventory is going to be have a big effect by providing rewards for people who will come after you for PvP, and then
if we didn't have the tier 0 item recovery,
forcing you to choose what you take with you,
exactly,
from a strategic standpoint.
And then the green and basically the green zones. So we will be adjusting the way that the green zones work and making them more law based. So, if you do act up in the city, then there's turrets that are there or security comes after you. So,
Okay, this is what I'm still confused on because of that whole thing about Hurston won't have reputation because you shot one of them and we don't want them to shoot you in the city. Whereas he literally is here being like, yeah, if you act up, we want you to get shot in the city. It's like, okay, which one is it? Because I think most people would like to know that the city security is going to react to you if you do something bad to them. I hope they clarify that again soon.
There's turrets that are there or security comes after you. So, there's other aspects like that will come into play.
So there will always be the potential for PvP in these safe places. It's just the folks who want it will have to really work for it. In those lawful places, like in the heart of the empire.
Correct.
And stuff.
Correct.
Now, this is something that people are happy to hear because it sounds natural and game-like, but this is also something a lot of people will tell you just simply won't work because players will be players and they'll do whatever they can to ruin other players' days. And I do think that no matter what, a system like this will miss edge cases. And the question becomes, is it worth possibly having those kinds of edge cases to have a cooler system? Because a lot of folks would just say, no, this isn't going to ever work. Players will never allow this kind of a natural gamified system to work to do this. It seems like it kind of works in other games, but I haven't played any other games super in depth that does stuff like this. I guess like a GTA Online maybe. Or Eve or Elite Dangerous. I have heard that it works fairly well in Eve, but Eve also has some different systems that make things, the time dilation stuff, and also I've also heard that it doesn't work well in Eve, so you never really know. I don't have personal experience with a system like this working, but I do think that they should go after it if that's what they set out for rather than chickening out. Not a lot of griefers in Star Citizen, but the problem is that it only takes one to get a lot of attention. I think a lot of the problems that we run into in terms of people getting shot and killed are misunderstandings. It's so easy to have a misunderstanding when two people have guns, no way to communicate, and a super glitchy, laggy game where you can get shot at any moment. That, we don't even have a safety net.
Thank you very much.
Our only safety net is the goddamn, or ships where we can't see names anymore. Yeah. A lot of misunderstandings. Hold on, let's finish listening in on this because he's going to explain a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to show you guys the instance stuff that they're trying to do to also help.
And I think with that, it's again, I like there being tension within the game. It could be very low, tension, but I still want there to be that tension,
right.
There. So something could pop off, and then you have to deal with, the circumstances at that time. So, that's.
Oh, and then the PvP slider is an internal tool instead of a forward-facing tool for the players. Used to determine what type of missions and everything that are available to it. It's almost seems like a reputation meter, sort of like if you get higher PvP reputation, we provide you more PvP opportunities,
Basically.
and if you have a lower PvP reputation, then we provide you more PvE opportunities.
Correct.
Cool. All right, I think we're going to call.
That is not the only time that they have specifically said that the PvP slider will not be a thing. There is one other point. I think it might have been Todd Pappy that time too. And this could change. That's kind of the worst part about it is like, I'm here to tell you what I know and what they've shown us and what they've said. This can all change because that's just the way they're developing the game. Like if something is a little bit different and they need to change it to fit the way the game is going, then they'll do that. And maybe we will get back to the point where there's a player-facing PvP slider. Who knows? But we have seen these new locations, which are also meant to help try to deter this problem. So it's not that CIG is not aware that they can do certain things to continue to make this work better. Personally, if you go to my poll that I put out and you look at the different options that people have been selecting, I think CIG is going to use all of these options. Artificial limitations, yeah. I think we're going to have armistice zones remain in some areas. In-game features, security forces, yeah, I think that's also going to be part of how we can still have open areas that are secure. And separated gameplay, maybe not with the PvE exclusive shards, but instance locations, yeah. They're going to do these too.
To contested zones in Pyro Station. And the municipal works will have spaces like maintenance, filtration, and the sewer network. Which is what we're seeing here. It's a very exotic place. So down here, it's an open world sandbox for you and other players, very similar to contested zones in Pyro Stations. It's an area to do local missions, like exploration, repair, or even pest control. But the main purpose is provide access to the depths. And these will be instanced areas. So, what is an instance area? Well, an instance area works in the same way as an instanced hangar. And as the name says, it's a separate space for you and your group. But why do we want to do this? This gives us the ability to create tailored missions that will provide a mixture of content like combat or exploration or puzzle gameplay, and fundamentally allows us to design challenging, meaningful content.
Yay. Meaningfulness.
All right, so let me illustrate. Going over here, how the depths will be split by levels. Now, stay with me on this. We're going to rattle through it quick. So let's say you're in level B01. You're running a mission, you're having a great time with the curated content I just mentioned. But down here, you'll have to do a variety of content over a period of time and over multiple play sessions. At the end of the mission, you'll find an access point, which will bring you back to the landing zone. And you'll do this loop multiple times with different mission content. After achieving the required amount of progression, your access level will be upgraded. So this time, you head down the access point elevator, and now it takes you all the way down to level B02, and you continue on with your journey. Now this is your new area with different mission content, new rewards, and a new access point back to the LZ. The same as B01, you'll do this loop multiple times. And you guessed it, eventually you'll get access to level B03, and we continue deeper. With each level you unlock, you access new areas for new mission loops. You'll access new, more challenging curated content and access better and better rewards. And this is what will form progression-based content.
Never heard of progression-based content before, dude. Hell yeah.
So as I just described, was a very condensed version of an actual play sessions, but this still describes the unique gameplay experience. Landing zone areas which will offer long-term gameplay progression. So that concludes this section on gameplay spaces for landing zone.
All right.
We're excited.
So that's a talk kind of about this whole area. This is them basically creating more gameplay for our corp because, like, you know, it's kind of missing a lot of ground. It's also them, I think, testing out the first version of what they have planned for these instanced areas. They basically act like our hangars right now, where you can walk into them through an entrance that anybody can see, but once you enter them, you're cut off from everybody else, kind of thing. So not quite like contested zones, more like the persistent hangars we currently have. Sorry, that's kind of loud. Just make an instance contested zone with a horror mode on it. I actually think that's what they're working on for Arena Commander. They're making a basically instanced horde mode for AC. I think this is cool for people who want it, and I love some Vermintide, but how long will it be interesting? Well, this specific part probably won't be that interesting for that long, but that's why you also got to add contested zones and other mining locations and Hathor locations and mining facilities and refineries and outposts and all that stuff. Like we gotta have dozens of these kinds of things so that we can jump between them all. Unless you're the kind of person who wants to do the same thing constantly, then you might end up getting bored, I think. You're all for sandbox PvPvE, but I don't see why the PvE areas wouldn't have a safe entrance for those who are only out for PvE. Well, if you... Okay, so let's say that they put these locations out somewhere in the game, and they say you have, like, you can't make the whole thing PvE. What would be the solution? You would make a location that was solely PvE instance locations, but you have to fly to a moon to get there. Do you make the whole journey from the planet to the moon PvE so that people don't feel like they have to fly through PvP areas to reach their PvE content? Or do you just put the PvE areas out there and then tell people, hey, these are in the world, find them? There's got to be some point at which there is risk. Otherwise, you just got to play Arena Commander at that point, I would think. It's on them to make sure that there are levels of how this works. Maybe some people want to get shot at while they're exploring. Maybe some people don't. I think there should be exploration opportunities in locations where you might get shot at and exploration opportunities in places where you don't, if they're, you know, putting that stuff together. Just at the landing zone. But the landing zone's not even going to be landing zone is also going to be a place where you can interact with other players. Secured space lanes. So how would a secured space lane work? Would it be like you can't use your guns, you can't use your salvage beams, you can't use your tractor beams, you can't use your mining lasers, and they would be like in between space stations and planets, but then certain space stations wouldn't have them. Why make it sandbox instead of just missions? You could do research horror mission that is instance, kind of like an escape room. Why make it sandbox instead of missions? I'm guessing they're going to have missions for these locations. You need dozens of these locations. Why not make Area 18, Lorville, and New Babbage have elevators down to them from the city center and have more risky ones on Moons and in Pyro? Could do that. Did they specify here that the city won't have...
We're adding gameplay areas will interweave with the London zone, but ultimately will be independent. So for Area 18, let me introduce you to the actual municipal works, which will be an open world sandbox area for all players as the depth.
You know what still doesn't work for me here is they're still not specifying whether or not cities will be locked armistice zones or not. I still just can't get past the idea that we won't be able to even heal each other in cities if that's what they decide to do. So this would all be assuming that cities remain as armistice zones, as green areas, but what if they did not? The idea of taking your ship there, which I have no problem with, that being PvP potential. I think there should be easy to get to content from cities. I'm just not sure about artificially protecting it unless the city is also artificially protected. In which case, yeah. Then the access points to these could definitely be safe. But that all depends on what they end up doing with the city. So yeah, this is really mostly what they've talked about, and at the end of it all, I think everybody's got some valid reasoning going into this, but I think it's just another one of the problems with Star Citizen, and that is that the game isn't ready, but we're playing it, and so it doesn't play correctly, and it kind of sucks at times, and people want CIG to change it so that it makes more sense for now. CIG doesn't want to because they have these plans, but they can't effectively communicate that to everyone, so the conversation just keeps going in circles. And we try to have these informative conversations where we bring up references and stuff, but this only gets so far. People only get to hear this kind of information so much. And at the end of the day, it's just a never-ending cycle of Star Citizen debate over things that haven't even been implemented yet. Here's the last little bit that they talked about it, though, at CitizenCon last year.
Player versus player content. As you know, 1.0 will contain 5 star systems, 3 of these being lawful in Stanton, Castra, and Terra, and 2 of them being unlawful in Pyro and Nyx. So what's the difference? Let's take a look at Stanton. Lawful systems will be a mixture of high, medium, and low security areas. Each of these areas will be monitored by law enforcement agencies, and depending on the location, will dictate the emergency response time, with high-sec areas being the fastest. Initially, this response will be measured, but over time will escalate to overwhelming force. This means if someone is attacked, if they can just hold out for a short duration, help will be on the way. Pirates will be able to disrupt this monitoring by shutting down the nearby comm arrays, but this will be highlighted in your star map, with dynamic missions being generated to bring it back online.
That's actually one of the craziest parts, is we can't even get information as to where is safe or dangerous. He's talking all about star systems and their own security levels, but you can even see here that just in Stanton itself, it's going to be more dangerous in certain areas. As mentioned in chat, in certain cities, it'll be dangerous in more areas. It's literally, they're taking the instanced idea of PvP that they had originally, and they're just applying it to a geographic structure. I don't know if it'll work, but the idea is basically meant to be, you've got your internal trade lanes and your safe spaces in between these planets for the most part. And then within these ecosystems, you also have dangerous spaces. But on a wider scale, on the star system basis, you also have that sort of danger area. So they really got to make sure that this kind of info is on your star map and easy to see for this to be reliable.
But this is the PvP you already know and experience right now, just without security forces. But before we jump into an unlawful system, let's explore what options you have if you pirate a ship.
All right. So that basically wraps it up. Really just wanted to once again highlight just how much of a debate this is, and it will continue to go on. I know this doesn't do anything to help with it, but the more we can kind of share what they've said about this stuff, you might believe it, you might not, but at least that's what it seems like they're trying to work towards. And they really got to get that. I'm thinking 4.3, 4.4. They need to add something security based or reputation based to start helping with these problems, because it's only going to get so much worse when we start getting things like base building in the game, engineering into the game. Everything that is making everything more high stakes is going to be such a pain with this kind of culture. But yeah, leave beautiful thoughts and lovely comments and happy things to say to each other below.